Okay, so it's a little bit after 7 CST. I think we can go ahead and get started, and if anybody else joins us, then we will welcome them in. But thank you for joining me, friends. Just to kind of start off, Harmonic Changes offers the Open Studio series, which is what this is part of. It's a monthly workshop of presentations, experiences to help connect, inspire, create, and grow with the community. This happens on every last Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. Pacific or 7 p.m. Central. And let's get started on our topic for today. Okay, so I'll be presenting on music therapy with Spanish-speaking communities. To introduce myself a little bit, I'm Julliana Castaneda. I'm a board-certified music therapist, and I've now been with Harmonic Changes since about August, and it's been great. Before we do get started, I did want to just put a little disclaimer out there that I am providing this presentation from the perspective of a first-generation Mexican-American woman. This just means that my parents were born in Mexico and immigrated to the US, and then I was then part of the first generation in my family to be born in the US. And my reason for just adding this in before beginning is to say that my perspective may be a little bit different from a music therapist with a Puerto Rican background or a music therapist with a Venezuelan background. Yeah, just putting that out there. Okay, let's talk about music therapy with Spanish-speaking communities. My big goal for this is to kind of give a couple considerations and recommendations for you to use in sessions with the Spanish-speaking community. So to talk a little bit about disparity in utilization of services between Spanish-speaking individuals versus non-Spanish-speaking individuals, or in this case, those that have English as their first language. What makes it really difficult to access services, it might be a lack of representation in the field. So unfortunately, I was unable to gain access to the 2021 or the 2020 workforce analysis that the American Music Therapy Association puts out. But as of 2019, there were about less than 4% of music therapists. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe the number was 3.8% of music therapists, of which responded to the workforce analysis, that consider themselves Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish, which is how the AMTA, American Music Therapy Association, identified this category. So another reason, another barrier might be the language barrier, which is something that we're going to talk about and discuss a little bit further down the presentation. So on average, I found that about 50% of Hispanic or Latinx individuals did not continue services after their initial session with their therapist. And this was specifically referring to talk therapy, but this was also in part due to feeling misunderstood or disconnected from the therapist. So having to consistently translate might be a little bit overwhelming, might be a little bit exhausting as well. And leading to those feelings of being misunderstood or not connected with your therapist. Just something to keep in mind that we'll also continue talking about later. And then also the financial barrier is a big one to kind of talk about. As of 2020, the Hispanic community, race non-specific, accounts for 17% of the US population that lives below the poverty line. Although receiving financial assistance from the government is an option for some people that are a part of the Hispanic or Latinx community, this may not be. And this might be, for example, because this certain individual or this certain family may be undocumented, which will lead them to having less access to things like Medicare and Medicaid. And paying out of pocket for services like music therapy just isn't an option. So that might be something for those considering doing private practice to keep in mind when kind of setting your rates or deciding if you want to offer sliding scale. Just keeping that in mind. A couple more considerations I wanted to touch on before giving a couple of recommendations is that there is a difference between Hispanic and Latinx. I've noticed that a lot of people like to use these interchangeably, and that is actually not quite appropriate to do so. And here's a couple of definitions to help differentiate the two. So Hispanic refers to any person, country, or community that speaks Spanish as their primary language. So if you're thinking of it on a geographical level, they are originating from Spain specifically. And then talking about the other term, Latinx, refers to any person, country, or community that is located or originates in Latin America. So this is different because it originates geographically in Latin America. And the difference also is important to note that not everyone that is considered Latinx speaks Spanish. They may speak Quechua or Portuguese or any other indigenous language from the area that they're from. And always, I think it is important and appreciated when asked what specific race or culture that your clients or patients identify with. Often these blanket terms of Hispanic or Latinx are a cultural monolithic identity, and it erases a bit of their specific race or specific culture that many of them are very proud of. So this is also a great way to build rapport with your client. It shows them that you really care to get to know them and get to know their culture and their background and where they come from. Okay, so let's keep moving on. Hopefully I don't breeze through this because I tend to speak quite fast. So now focusing on the language part, communicating without language first, and then we'll go into with language. Body language is something that I learned a lot in school, and I'm sure you all did as well. One thing that one of my professors really loved to share with us was the SOLAIRE method of using body language. So SOLAIRE is just an acronym that stands for S, being facing your client squarely, O, having an open posture, L, leaning in or leaning forward, E, maintaining eye contact, and R, remaining relaxed. I did put a quick little asterisk on the eye contact part because it is important to keep in mind that your client may feel uncomfortable with direct eye contact. In some Hispanic or Latinx cultures, eye contact can be seen as a sign of disrespect. So if you find that your client is avoiding the eye contact, that might be a key indicator of why that is. And also I would say maybe the same for leaning in or leaning forward. Always remain as relaxed as possible to remain as non-threatening as possible. And then when thinking about communicating without language, remember that you are a music therapist, for those of you that are, and always go back to the music. This is something that I hold near and dear to my heart as an affirmation of when I feel stuck or overwhelmed in a session, just always go back to the music. There are many ways in which a music therapist can communicate using music. One example that I give here is instrumental improvisation. So with improvisation, there's no need for describing rules or discussing structure and translating that from English to Spanish with your client. And then a little tip is that using unpitched instruments might even simplify this further, because there's then no need to translate how exactly the instrument needs to be played. Okay, and then now focusing on communicating with language, the use of formalismo or formalism. This is something that just means using proper use of titles to show respect based on age, is really common within Hispanic or Latinx cultures. So I do want to note that I acknowledge that this unfortunately does not, or it excludes our non-binary friends. But if you were to give the English equivalent to señor or señora, it would be Mr. or Mrs. I added remaining authentic just as a reminder to say, similar to what I said in the past slide, remaining as authentic as possible really goes a long way with your clients. It's important to show our clients that we genuinely care to understand them and care to try to communicate with them in any way that we can. A lot of people like to use translator apps or translators. For example, if you're in a hospital or something. They can be very, very useful. I would just advise using them with a little bit of caution and not using them as a crutch or as your only means of connecting with your clients, just because it can leave a gap in that connection. If you think about it in a visual way, you have your client, and then in the middle, there's always that piece. So there's not a direct link between you and your client. So just kind of considering that it can leave a gap in the connection you're trying to build with your client. And then speaking of translations, I did want to share a couple of different phrases that I find might be useful for you in a session with Spanish-speaking individuals. So on the left side are the English phrases, and then the right side is the Spanish translation of the phrases. So I'll just kind of quickly run through these, and then I'll always be sure to say the Spanish translation twice, just in case you want to rehear, re-listen how it is pronounced. So looking at the first one is, hi, I'm a music therapist. You're introducing yourself to your client. In Spanish, you might say, hola, yo soy musicoterapeuta. So again, that's hola, yo soy musicoterapeuta. And then if you're trying to build some rapport with your clients and get to know them a little bit, you might ask them, what kind of music do you enjoy? Kind of the one question that I always ask all of my clients in an assessment session. In Spanish, that would translate to, ¿qué tipo de música te gusta? So again, that's ¿qué tipo de música te gusta? If you're trying to invite your client to sing with you, in English, you'd say, I invite you to sing with me. In Spanish, that would be, te invito a cantar conmigo. So say you want to do the same thing with an instrument. Say you're doing instrumental improvisation like we talked about. In English, you'll say, hey, I invite you to play this instrument. In Spanish, that would translate to, te invito a tocar este instrumento. So one more time, that's, te invito a tocar este instrumento. And then lastly, another question you might ask your client when first meeting them is, would you like to receive music therapy services today? I know that's kind of just specific to certain settings, but in Spanish, that would translate to, ¿te gustaría recibir servicios de musicoterapia hoy? One more time, that's, ¿te gustaría recibir servicios de musicoterapia hoy? So these are just a couple of phrases to kind of keep in your arsenal if you want to use them. And then also just a quick reminder that this is being recorded, so if you guys ever want to go back, it'll be there as a resource for you, so that you're not like writing these down furiously. Okay, and then apart from sharing these phrases, I also wanted to share a list of 10 different songs that I use in almost every single session with Spanish-speaking clients. These are the songs, and then I'll give a little bit of a brief background of the song or of what clients that I might use them with. And then before sharing the songs, again, I just wanted to give a reminder that this is from my perspective and my experience as a Mexican-American music therapist. So most of the songs on this list are originating from Mexico, and that's just because these are the songs that I learned from my childhood. So these might be of use to you, and they might not, but they might be a good thing to add to your repertoire. So the first one is De Colores. De Colores is a traditional Mexican folk song. A lot of people will recognize the first verse right away. I did provide chord charts that will be available on the next blog post on the Harmonic Changes website. So kind of look for that at harmonicchanges.com. This song is really great. It's really great to use with all ages. I've used it with little ones all the way to older adults. It's a very diverse song, very sweet, and I'll be sharing that one with you later. Number 2 is Cielito Lindo. So this is another song originating from Mexico by composer Quirino Mendoza Cortés. This is one that's very familiar to the ear, and it's even sung, as a fun fact, it's even sung at Mexico soccer games to amp up and pump up the soccer players. This is the one that goes like, ay, 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 canta y no llores. So I'm sure you're familiar with that little tune. Number 3 is Las Mañanitas. So this is the equivalent to the birthday song in Mexico culture. So this was popularized by Manuel M. Ponce. This is a song that's typically sung in the mornings, which is the translation to Las Mañanitas is the mornings. This is something that's used to wake up the birthday person or greet them in the morning on their birthday. Number 4 is Ahora Seremos Felices. So this is a very fun and lively song by Puerto Rican composer Rafael Hernandez. I typically use this one in sessions with older adults. It's been received really well. It's a super great fun song to use in sessions with like instrument play, for example. The next song on my list is actually a song that was recommended to me by a resident. I had never heard it until just a few months ago, and it's called Allá en el Rancho Grande. So this is quite the gem of a song. After looking it up when this song was requested to me, I later realized just how popular it was. It was written in the 1920s, and it was even covered by the likes of Dean Martin and Elvis Presley, which is really cool. The next song on my list is La Bamba. So this is another one that you all might be familiar with. This is actually also a Mexican folk song, which I just learned recently. It originates from the state of Veracruz in Mexico and was originally actually a wedding song. It's kind of a fun fact, but you all may know it as it was recorded and released in 1958 by Richie Valens. So Ave Maria is another song that is great to use with Spanish-speaking individuals. You might find that some of your clients are quite religious, and that's just because religion is a big part of most Hispanic and Latinx cultures. In my experience, I have been asked to use this song, or the Spanish translation of this song, in a couple of different sessions. Number 8 is Bésame Mucho. So this is a bolero song that was written by Consuelo Velázquez. Another great one to use with older adults or just adults. This is a beautiful song, and it has been translated into many different languages. Actually, the first time I ever heard the song, I heard it in Portuguese. Number 9 is Yo Conozco Una Gallina. So you might know this song as it's originally called I Know a Chicken by Laurie Berkner. This is probably my favorite song of all time to use with kids in school settings. It's a really, really great fun song to use. And I loved it so much that I wanted to translate it to use with my Spanish-speaking kiddos in the school setting. And it's been received really well. It's been super fun to use. Another great one to use with Spanish-speaking children in school settings is El Semáforo. So this one I learned from a different music therapist. Her name is Mabel Ortiz Guzman. She's a music therapist and social worker. She is the owner of Limitless Harmonies, and I was actually subscribed to her newsletter. She sent out a resource, and she was actually kind enough to let me share the link on that blog post I mentioned that will be on the Harmonic Changes website. So yeah, just as a reminder that I created these chord charts for each of these songs minus El Semáforo, and they'll be available on the next blog post on our website, and they will look a little bit like this. So in the next slide, I'm going to share one of the songs. We'll kind of just go through what it looks like right now. So again, this is De Colores, a traditional Mexican folk song. So all of the resources that I created will look very similar to this, just kind of changed what the song is, what the chords are. And I would love to share it with you. If you guys do know the song, you're welcome to sing at home. If you don't know it, I'm happy to share it with you. Okay, so this one's in 3/4, just in case you were curious. colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir, y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí, y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Canta el gallo con el kirikiri, kirikiri, kiri. La gallina con el cara, 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 cara. Los polluelos con el pío, 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 pío. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. All right. So we're kind of nearing the end of the presentation. Before I leave any room for questions that you might have, I wanted to share this quote that I found as I was doing a little bit of my research for the first half of this presentation. And this is it. So this was said by Jeanette Altariva, PhD. I'm just going to make sure I get her title right. That she is a psychology professor and associate dean for academic affairs for the College of Arts and Sciences at the University of Albany of the State University of New York. It's kind of a mouthful, but she is a very, very brilliant person. And one thing I found from one of the articles that I believe was called Closing the Gap for Latino Clients. This is what it was. Oh no. There we go. She said, Latino clients will view a relationship as positive, in part when it has elements of being mutual and reciprocal. The compromiso, or commitment, that develops brings expectations of mutual behavior, such as responsiveness, respeto, respect, confianza, or trust, dignidad, dignity, as well as an allowance for ample space and time. Mutual self-disclosure is expected, kind of like what I said earlier. So just kind of being as non-threatening as possible and just kind of keeping these things in consideration. And personalismo, being personable, is a part of the foundation of the relationship. So again, just bringing in your most authentic self to your session and demonstrating genuine care to connect with your Spanish-speaking client is a must. And it really does go a long way. Before we do end, I know I kind of breezed through this. Does anybody have any questions? Like maybe no. Okay, so just to restate this, so you'll be able to find the resources and chord charts that I created for the song list that I shared on the Harmonic Changes blog. I hope that this has been useful to you and you are able to use any of the information that I shared or any of the songs that I shared in your upcoming sessions with your Spanish-speaking clients and Spanish-speaking individuals, just in general. I hope that you all have a wonderful Wednesday night and look forward to the next one. So it's going to be at the end of March on a Wednesday, the last Wednesday of the month at 5 p.m. Pacific or 7 p.m. Central. It's our social media if you want to find us. And then also, if you'd like to contact Harmonic Changes, here is the info for that. All right, y'all. I hope you can have a great rest of your night. Thanks for being here.